Welcome to Not in a Huff with Jackson Huff, where we interview newsmakers, storytellers, and all-around interesting people. Sit back, relax, unless you're driving, and enjoy the show. Here's Jackson.
Hello. I am Jackson Huff. This is Not in a Huff. Thanks so much for joining me. As always, really appreciate it. This week I'm speaking with Charlotte Creaghan. Now, Charlotte was recently in a scary movie that I saw in the theaters. I don't know whether I've talked about it in the podcast or not, but I go to a lot of movies. I'm actually in kind of the movie club. If you're in the United States and have an AMC theater, they've got a monthly subscription where you can go to 3 movies a week. Normally hit at least 3 a week, and I've talked to some people from those movies in the past, but Charlotte was nice enough to join me. She recently was in a Violent Nature. The movie is called In a Violent Nature. It's a low budget scary movie, but it's a very unique scary movie. It was one that was accepted into Sundance, which is a huge film festival, and I think that's happened because of it being so unique. It follows the killer. It's a slasher movie. It follows the killer through the whole process. Generally you're watching, a group of teens and, the killer come and goes, and, the jump scares are when he, joins the group to do the things that he's going to do, which is the scary part. But in this one, you're following the killer pretty much the whole movie. You're following him walking through fields to get to the next place. You're following him as he does meet up with people. So that's unique. That it's almost like a video game where you're walking behind the slasher character in this movie. The slasher character's name is Johnny, and Charlotte plays one of the poor teenage victims that is out in the forest. She happens to be doing yoga when she meets Johnny, and I'll tell you, the scene is one I think that is extremely memorable for people who do like slasher films. And I do like scary movies. I like a good jump scare. I don't always like the super gory ones. This one is a little extra gory, and her scene is extremely gory. I think the only way I can describe it is kind of the yoga kill. She's doing yoga, and the scene plays out in a very yoga way as well. I'll let her explain it. She does a pretty good job, but I think the only way that you're going to truly grasp exactly what happens in her scene is to watch it. I believe there is a clip on YouTube if you don't want to watch the whole movie, but I recommend you doing that for sure. But we're going to talk about just filming a scene like that, being in this movie. It's one of her first roles, so what that was like, having to actually reshoot almost the entire movie. Apparently they shot it. They had some issues on the back end. They had some recasting, and they pretty much reshot the entire movie over again. So what that was like, they reshot it a year later. So that was a unique thing. Charlotte's going to talk about just going from not liking scary movies as a kid to now really enjoy being a part of them. Going to talk about her advice to others that want to get into the movie world, which I think you're going to find it humorous what her advice is to others in that regard. We're going to talk about just her aspirations in the future when it comes to acting. Acting in a scary movie is a unique thing, and it's something that you've got to kind of decide, hey, is this something I want to do? Because you can get in a lot of scary movies, whether they're high or low budget, but you don't want to necessarily pigeonhole yourself in that, because there's people that can't get out of that world either. So I really think Charlotte is going places. I really, really enjoyed speaking with her. She's a Canadian actress. I didn't know before this conversation, but the entire crew is Canadian, and the film is as well. So it was just a pleasure to speak with her. I think you're going to really enjoy it. Before I pass it over to that conversation, of course, I've got to remind you, you listen to this, you like it, please go leave a 5-star rating on Apple and on Spotify. Leave a written review on Apple. That helps a lot. But we'll talk again at the end. Here is Charlotte Creaghan. I'm here today with Charlotte Creaghan. Miss Creaghan, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Hardest question of the evening. I let you kind of do the heavy lifting. Just introduce yourself.
I'm Charlotte Creaghan and I play Aurora in A Violent Nature.
Yeah, and we're going to talk, of course, about that, but I wanted to kind of talk about your acting and you as a whole as well. How did you get involved in the world of acting? Was it, a young person in theater? Did you kind of get your start in the silver screen, or what's that look like?
I, for as long as I can remember, I've wanted to be an actor. Um, yeah, I used to play a lot of imaginary games when I was a kid and kind of was in my head a lot and loved playing and kind of pretending I was someone else. Was also very curious about what it was like to be someone else. And and then that solidified more when I was in high school. And then I went to theater school at Stella Adler, and yeah, it sort of all started from there, I guess.
Gotcha. So, we're going to talk a lot about in a violent nature. That's a recent thing that you've been in, but outside of that, what's some other things that you've done? I've looked at your, I can never get the letters right. When people make me do letters, I have a trouble. IMDb. I've looked at that. You've got some other stuff there. Talk a little bit about some of your other work.
Yeah, another feature film that I was in was called So Much Tenderness, and I filmed that a couple years ago. And that was the director of that was Lena Rodriguez, which is a another filmmaker um, based in Toronto. And that was a very interesting experience. I felt really lucky to work on both So Much Tenderness and In a Violent Nature, sort of like close together because they were wildly different experiences, but they were both led by very passionate and intelligent people, and both of them had really great teams. So I feel really lucky um, to have worked on two feature films where I felt really proud of the final outcome of them.
That's awesome for sure. I know kind of when people are I guess getting their start in some of these feature films, they're not always ones that they love. I've talked to a lot of actors, and sometimes, kind of cutting your teeth, so to speak, is in things that people don't love. So it sounds like you've kind of been lucky and had two films that have been, I guess, good to you, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wanna I wanted to talk about In a Violent Nature. It's was recently released, and I want to be careful in saying it was the last thing you worked on because it seems like from listening to other interviews, it filmed a while ago and then it was reshot. What happened there? That you kind of explained it, but that just seems so wild to me. Was the whole thing redone?
Yeah, we've started filming in 2021 in Peterborough, which is just outside of Toronto, about an hour outside of Toronto in Canada. And um, we there had sort of been a lot of like unforeseen circumstances that happened in terms of what we were filming in nature. So there were a lot of things that happened that were unexpected. Yeah, and then so we filmed that all, but there was definitely a few missing shots that still needed to be done. So we always knew that there was going to be pickups, because definitely there were a few things that went wrong, which happens when you're having to sort of work with the elements. And once they rewatched in the when Chris Nash and when he was rewatching um, some of the takes. I don't think he felt pleased with all of them, and so we reshot it in Northern Ontario in Sault Ste. Marie, which is sort of like a different location. That's about 8 hours north of Toronto. And yeah, with a different Johnny. So yeah, it was pretty much all reshot. Um, I think that they felt when they were watching the original takes that that wasn't quite the vision that they had hoped for. So they came back with a few different ideas and a different location and a new Johnny, and yeah, reshot it in Sault Ste. Marie about a
Hmm.
year later.
What did you think when, I mean, did you know back when, it was shot the first time that it maybe wasn't going the way they wanted and it was going to be, something they looked at more? Or were you shocked when, a year later they were like, let's run it back?
I was definitely surprised, because I'd never heard of that happening to anyone before, or anyone sort of around me or actor friends. I hadn't heard of that before. Um, but I also trusted Chris, and I trusted the team, and I was personally really excited. I know that was a huge um, probably stressor on the producers and Chris, the director, but I was excited because I got to do it as an actor. I got to do it again, and I got to have a second chance at doing it. I was psyched to be able to do it again and do it in Sault Ste. Marie as well.
Yeah. Was the parts that you had to reshoot, was it just kind of a technical nature of what they wanted to change? Obviously, the location change, that's a huge thing. Was it more of a filming type thing, or did your part change from one movie, which if they've reshot it, it's almost a whole second movie. So from one movie to another, was your part pretty much the same?
Yeah, the part was pretty much the same. I think just, yeah, a few of the shots were a little bit different, and I think they took away, I think they cut some scenes and added some new stuff in. But in terms of the character and the scenes that I were in, those were pretty much all the same.
Gotcha. I gotcha. Yeah. So, did you ever get to see the original one? I mean, you said that you were really happy that you were able to redo things because I mean, all actors see things and say, "Hey, I wish I would have done that just a little bit differently." And you had the opportunity this time. Were you able to see it and say, "Yeah, they're right. This was a much better product that finally came out."
I didn't see any of the original shots or takes. I did have some like moments after we filmed it where as all this happens all the time, but where I thought I could have done something different, or I could have added this, or you know, I should have, said that line differently. So the second time around, I kind of was able to take what I thought was missing and yeah, add it to the second time. And of
Yeah,
course, it
and
was shot a while later, so I had different ideas as well.
right, right. Well, I mean, you said that there was a new casting when it came to Johnny, but when it comes to reshooting a whole movie, I'm just surprised, everyone was still available. Was that the only person they had to get new? But, in the world of entertainment, people are off doing lots of different projects to try to bring the same people together again a year later has can't be super easy all the time.
Yeah, I think they tried to work with people's. They definitely wanted to make sure everyone could be in and be in it again. So they definitely worked with our schedules a little bit, and um, took our availability into account when they were um, filming the second time around. So they were very good about being supportive that way.
Oh, that's good for sure. I've kind of got stuck on this reshooting part. Let's move past that and let's talk about the actual movie. We kind of jumped right into the weeds of it, but we really didn't talk about what the movie's about. So tell us, just like I had you introduce yourself, introduce the movie. What's in it in a violent nature, and then was pretty unique when it comes to, scary movies and how it was done. So talk a little bit about that.
In a Violent Nature is a slasher film that's all in perspective of the killer, and there is a group of campers, myself included in that, and other people in this sort of cottage country area that come to an unfortunate fate. But what's, yeah, unique about it, and like what a lot of people have, and what I first noticed with what struck me when I first read the script was um, that it was sort of all in the point of view of Johnny the killer.
And the interviews that I've heard you talk to people was kind of before it came out. So now that it has came out, it's been in theaters. It was at my local theater. I saw it. That's why I reached out to you. And that is so. What's reactions have you had? Because it is unique when it comes to that perspective. It's shot in an interesting way. I mean, if you read reviews, a lot of people like it, but a lot of people also say that there's a lot of walking. There's a lot of walking going on in the movie.
Yeah, well, I think this was a very low budget film filmed in, Northern Ontario, um, with with a very small crew. And I knew that the script was great. I knew that the crew was great, but you never know what's going to happen um with something of that budget. I could have never expected I was that it would go to Sundance. A lot of stuff in Canada, unfortunately, um, doesn't get the same wide releases as as movies in the States. It's sort of hard for people outside of Canada. It's sort of hard to get the movie to audiences outside of Canada, especially small independent films. So this was um, such an amazing surprise, for it to get into Sundance and then for it to have a wide release over like 1,400 theaters in across North America. Um, so it was super shocking, but obviously very exciting. And it's been really fun to see the reactions of different people. I don't know what I necessarily expected, but I didn't expect as many people to sort of be talking about it. And so it's just fun to see people talking about it at all, and it's fun to read about different people's opinions about it. Um, I personally think those walking scenes are beautiful. When I first saw them, I didn't realize that it was going to have that pace. Um, and yeah, I remember the first thing I noticed was how beautiful it looked. And it was really nice to have that time. For me, I felt it was really nice to have that time with Johnny. I know some other people felt differently about it, but that's kind of makes it fun that other people have big varying opinions on it.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I guess the fact of the matter is when it comes to, films that are lower budget, it means that, their marketing budget's not as big. So, I mean, at the end of the day, definitely when it comes to scary movies, because scary movies, everyone always has their opinions, and I feel like scary movies are some of the worst rated movies just because everyone likes to rag on them. But whether people are talking good about it or whether they're talking bad about it, when it comes to a movie like this, as long as they're talking about it, that's what really matters. So, and I heard a lot of people talk about it for sure. I enjoyed it. I also thought that the walking scenes were cool just because it made me think, okay, yeah, all of these other slasher movies, Michael Myers and Jason and all these, I mean, all you see is you see the kill scenes, but of course, in the background, if these are real people, that's exactly what they'd have to be doing. And we love, that they they slow walk in all these kills. What do you think in between that they're running and only slow walking the other time? So I thought it was it was rewarding. I liked it for sure. Yeah. So I want you to now kind of introduce us to your character. You were part of kind of the camping group, but you played a kind of a unique role. We're going to get to, I guess, why your one of your scenes is probably one of the most memorable ones in the movie. But introduce us to Aurora, if you would.
Yeah, so Aurora is one of the 20 something campers who, or cottagers who um, go to the forest for the weekend. And yeah, when you're first introduced to the characters, they seem to have like very clear archetypes. And, um, as you saw, the language is sort of like fun and campy. Um, so Aurora is in the group. She's definitely the more new agey one. Definitely a little bit cutting at times. And yeah, I mean, sometimes I think possibly a little annoying, but she was fun. I thought she was a fun character to play. You see her have a very unfortunate way of leaving.
That's putting it mildly. And I also in other interviews that you've done, you talked about, you know, what the script said that Charlotte was going to be, and you talked about how the word new age was in there, and you thought it was kind of interesting, a unique word to use. You just used it now, so maybe that word's growing on you for Aurora, huh?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Um, I think part of that, the reason, there needed to be a way that she was into yoga. So the new agey aspect of that um was definitely tied in with that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was fun.
Well, let's get to yoga here now because that's a huge part of your part. So let's talk about why your part I guess is so talked about, and it is because of that love of yoga. And your character decided in the movie that they were going to do some yoga. I think right next to a cliff, and wasn't a great probably a great decision given what was happening. Um, you can talk a little bit about kind of about that scene. I guess it's called kind of a the yoga kill, but it's one of the most, I don't know, gruesome, unique kills that probably I've ever seen in a movie. And you know, in some of those reviews when I've read people talking about it being a lower budget movie, they're shocked about how that was able to be done in a low budget movie because I don't know if 80% of the budget went to that one scene, but that is not a low budget scene. So talk a little bit about let's start with talk about when you read about that in the script, and I don't even know how they would put that into words, but talk about what you thought when you read that was going to be your demise.
Well, everything that you see on the screen was in the script. Of course, when you're reading it, it doesn't have the same effect as when you're watching it. But when I was reading it, it was still a very wild thing to read. And I had to read it over like a bunch of times to like comprehend what was going on. And then when I talked to Chris Nash, the director, about it, yeah, he confirmed. He laughed, which is funny. It's like a lot of people's reactions to that scene, whether they read it or watch it. And yeah, he confirmed that he kind of tried to come up with the craziest death he could think of. And yeah, and that was it. And then we tried to film it like multiple times, and like different, I think it was like 3 or 4 times that we tried to film it before um, finally getting what you see on screen, because of the location and obviously all of the special effects were very hard to nail, and all like the little things coming together. It was yeah, it was very tricky to film.
Yeah. Tell us in your words what happened in this scene.
Like beat by beat.
Well, not both. Well, maybe not beat by beat. As much as you want to say.
Well, basically what happens is my character Aurora is doing yoga on the cliff, on a cliff, and Johnny comes and he basically stabs her and then essentially turns her into a human pretzel and then throws her off the cliff.
Yeah, that'll do it for
Yeah.
sure. So how did the filming of that happen? I know that I've heard you say that it took course over 2 days. So is it something that, a good chunk of it was special effects? Is there like a fake person in there? Is it a very, unfortunate stunt double's last day? What did it look like?
Yeah, so I had to do a body cast. So there was 3 different like prosthetic versions of my body on set. So that's what they used for the parts where my neck is breaking and where the head is going through the stomach. Um, so yeah, there were no body doubles. For the parts where the hook was going into my head, that was all special effects and makeup, and same with the hook in the stomach. So there was like, sort of like a fake stomach, and then they put blood and a hook in there. So there was real artistry with the special effects team, and it was very eye-opening for me to witness their work on that. It was so cool. And they have to constantly problem solve because something, as with everything with making a film, but something that you think is going to work doesn't quite work, or the vision that you had is not really playing out. So there was just like constant restructuring of things and how they put the hook in the head. They sort of you kind of like have to figure it out on the day of like how it's going to fit into my head because everyone's hair is different, everyone's head size is different. So they kind of had to like do that on the fly and very quickly. And they ended up sort of like tying my hair around the hook, which was really cool. Yeah, it was a lot of problem solving on the day of. And there's a lot of very talented people sort of working around me, like a whole team of people just like constantly around me, touching up the blood, touching up the hooks. And then there was also just like, meanwhile, there was mosquitoes everywhere in Sault Ste. Marie. So it just added to the craziness of that whole scene.
Let's kind of step away from, the specifics of the movie and just ask, let's take it kind of all the way to the beginning of the movie and what made you decide to, I guess, I don't know how it worked. Did you were you connected with the makers of this movie? Was it a, a casting call? What made you decide to want to potentially attach yourself to the film?
I got the audition through my agents, and I just sent in a self-tape, and I hadn't met anyone on the team prior to that. So yeah, I sent in a self-tape, and then we had a callback, and then we had a little bit of a discussion because they had to make sure I was okay with doing the prosthetics because that I remember during that we had a Zoom meeting after the callback about the getting the prosthetics done. And they were very serious and wanted to make sure that I was okay with the prosthetics. And I remember at the time thinking, why, like, this doesn't sound like a big deal at all. They're just, plastering your body. Um, but some people, get super claustrophobic during that time, and it does take about 8 hours to do. So I remember they had to make sure I was okay with that, and luckily it all went okay, and I didn't get claustrophobic or anything. I actually found it quite relaxing. And then, yeah, and then they had to make sure I was going to be okay, or all of the actors were going to be okay with the content of it, and um, having to work outside and or work like in the forest in that kind of way. Yeah, they had to make sure people were sort of like gung ho and up for it because if not, it just really it would have really uh yeah, not worked. So luckily the whole cast and the crew were very, very up for it and very down to earth people. But yeah, so that was pretty much the process of getting cast.
Yeah, well, that makes for a good, I guess, behind the scenes too. And that's the next question I want to ask is what was it like, I guess, the filming, the behind the scenes side of things? Because when you know, when people are doing very dramatic roles, they can't stay in that for that long. When people are doing scary things, of course, you don't want to, have a tense behind the scene. That does not make for good things on camera. So what was behind the scenes like? Hopefully pretty jovial.
Yeah, the behind the scenes of filming I mean, there were a lot of or not a lot, there were a few like night shoots. So people tend to get, when they don't have a lot of sleep, tend to get very silly. So yeah, there was a lot of silliness on set for sure, and a lot of very funny people. I remember thinking that when we were filming. It was like almost intimidating. I was like, these so many very funny people, like all the actors and the crew. And I think that humor came out of, that happens when I think it was just like the juxtaposition of what we were filming. There needed to be a lightness there. And we were also all like essentially like stuck in the wilderness together for those for the times that we were shooting. So luckily that just yeah brought up a lot of humor in people. And yeah, there was a lot of joking around, a lot of warmth and support. And as I said earlier, like I was so impressed by how people were problem solving, just like so quickly, just on the fly, changing things constantly. Shannon, the producer, was just like had her hands in so many different tasks, and she was just doing so much all the time. And yeah, so I just remember being really impressed by by the team and what was going on behind the scenes.
I love that, and I wonder from this movie, what lessons do you think you've taken away for your future roles? What do you think you've gained from being in this movie?
Hmm, it's a good question.
I try to throw one or two of them in there.
I think, well, one thing is working on dying. I was really nervous, not for like the logistical aspect of dying, but I was nervous about like if I was going to be able to sell it. I had never screamed like that before, and having to scream over and over again. I just remember thinking, I hope this sounds like realistic and not just dumb. So I was really nervous about, yeah, making sure it just kind of like worked from my end. And now I think there was another project I had to do where I had to scream. And I was like, no problem. I've
Mm.
done this so many times at this point. So there's no issue here. And working with fake blood and dying, I think I would feel if I ever get to do that again, I think I would feel pretty, at least more confident than I did before. But definitely I feel would feel more confident dying on a future project.
That's that would be quite the sound bite without context. But yeah, I understand what you mean. Uh, I want to ask you now, and it kind of feeds right into to what you're saying, and that is you I guess you're so good with fake blood, you're confident in dying on set now. Is scary movies something that you want to continue working in? And I asked that specifically because I know scary movies, growing up was not I don't believe they were your favorite. So now that you've kind of became a little bit I guess famous for the way that you died in a scary movie, that's kind of funny given that you're not a weren't a huge scary movie fan you know at one point.
Yeah, I do remember being little and thinking, I want to be an actor, but I couldn't be in scary films. I do remember thinking that. And then one of the first films I was in was a very gruesome film. So yeah, that's definitely quite the shift. And obviously when you're filming it, it's not the same as watching it. So there's really no parts of it when I was filming that were scary, except for the odd time, like catching a glimpse of my prosthetic like body, the prosthetic version of me. That was sometimes scary, or seeing Johnny and not realizing that he was there. So the odd time there were some scary moments, but overall it was really quite the opposite of that. And yeah, I would definitely be open to doing another horror movie. I had so much fun doing this film, and I've had a lot of fun engaging with people in the horror community, and it makes me more excited about the genre. And yeah, so I'd be really open to doing pretty much any genre, and especially if the director was someone who I felt aligned with, that would be amazing. And the script was interesting and something that I resonated with. So those two things I feel like are the most important. But yeah, so I'd be open to doing any genre, but I've really had so much fun being a part of the horror community, and I would definitely do it again.
Yeah, so being in the movie and playing a part in a horror movie, has it kind of opened your eyes into the genre, and it's something you like, or you're like, I'll play the parts all day, but in my free time I'm watching, The Notebook or something.
No, it's definitely in the past few years something I've, well, as I started getting more into film in general, later in high school and since then, I've incorporated more horror movies, for sure. And, now some of my favorite movies, I think, are horror movies like Possession and The Lure are both are some of my favorite films. So I think I definitely choose now to sit down and watch a horror movie, whereas before that I would probably have to be forced into doing that. But I've
That's
definitely been quite, I guess it's been a slow progression, but it's definitely a 180 now compared to what it used to be when I was younger, which is probably a lot of people.
Right. No, no, for sure. So playing into this the same type of question, given that you have been in a horror movie now and one that I think has scared people and certainly your death scene is one that I think scares people in an interesting way, just because I don't, it's not like, scary, scary. It's more just kind of gory. You talked about how you do like some horror movies now. So what scares you? What kind of scary movie is something that's actually scary to you?
I think something that would really scare is like something like super haunting. So something that like leaves you with leaves you the feeling that whatever you just watched is still with you in a very emotional way in which you can't really shake off. So that's probably the scariest kind of film to me. And that can be, doesn't, then that's not just in horror movies. There's some just like very emotional, dark films that just you just can't seem to shake off for a couple days. And those I guess I find the scariest.
Yeah.
Yeah, something that keeps haunting you afterward.
Yeah. Last question I want to ask you when it comes to the world of film, and then I've got a couple other questions. And you're still kind of in the beginning of your career when it comes to film roles, so you're close enough to the beginning that I feel like you can offer good advice to people that are just beginning. So what advice do you have to people who want to get into the world of whether it's scary movies or anything else? What advice do you have?
This may sound like an annoying answer, but to sort of just like not take other people's advice. That's
All right.
that sounds, I don't mean to be cheeky, but I think there's so many things people, when I was in acting school and after that, there's so many things people want to tell you what to do and out of very with very good intentions, but everyone's way that they find things is and everyone's path is super different and unique. So at the end of the day, you just have to kind of go with your gut because I think a lot of people, there's so many things that you can listen to that other people say, but it's might not work for you. So yeah, just really, I don't know, maybe that sounds cliche, but yeah, just really following your gut and maybe not necessarily not listening to people's advice, but taking everything with a grain of salt.
Hmm. Kind of a meta answer
And
because you're giving
yeah.
advice now, but we're not supposed to take any advice. So
Yeah.
is taking is your advice of not taking other people's advice basically telling people not to take your advice about that? So we can that's a never
Yeah.
ending circle
Just
about that.
ignore everything I said. Yeah.
Exactly. But I've been doing this long enough that I've got to kind of dig deeper into that question and your answer, and that is, given your answer is not to take other people's advice, maybe the better question for you then is, what's some advice that you got that was not very good? Because it sounds like you maybe didn't have great, some great help at one point or another if you're telling people not to listen to others.
It's funny because I can't actually think of like a really bad piece of advice that I've gotten, but there have definitely been things like I'm more of a shy person. So I think I have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder about that because a lot of the time I think, when I was starting out and especially like in high school and when I was younger, people were kind of like, I got the message a lot like, the message that I was getting was you can't be like this and you have to change sort of who you are if you want to be part of this sort of world and you have to be super gregarious and out there all the time. And I think that's sort of what people think when they think of actors. So I've always felt a little bit self-conscious about that. But I mean, of course, it's like a fine balance because I still want to push myself outside of my comfort zone and make connections with people. But I also don't have to completely change, you know, the way that I am to do so. Yeah, I think that's why I sort of think that because I've managed to make some really good connections with people and artistic connections with people without sort of having to be what I thought an actor should be.
No, that makes a lot of sense for sure. Here's another question that's really, really easy for me to ask, but not always really easy to answer on the fly. And that's, you're in that entertainment industry now, you're in the entertainment world. What's some of the most rewarding parts of it so far? And then, of course, conversely, some of the things that you realize, that's not so great.
Um, the most rewarding parts for me, like the first thing that comes to mind is being in that theater in Sundance, because that was something, Sundance was it was definitely a dream of mine, growing up. That's where so many amazing independent films have had their premieres. And to be able to be in Utah at Sundance with the cast and some of the crew of In a Violent Nature was just, that was a huge dream come true. And then to watch the movie with an audience and having that sort of like crazy energy from the audience was super rewarding and super fun. That being able to experience this with an audience is not something that I expected to like so much, but yeah, it's been so fun having having people come up to you after the film and say that was great and ask you questions about it. That feels very fun and it feels like you're part of a community, which wasn't what I was expecting. I think going into Sundance or before we watched it, I kind of felt expected it to feel like very separated between the audience and us. But while we were watching it and after, it felt very like wholesome and cyclical. I don't know if I'm making sense right now, but it felt like we were part of the audience and the audience was part of us too. It felt like a very wholesome experience. And yeah, that's definitely stands out as a highlight. And in terms of things that were not so rewarding, I don't think I have anything yet. I think, reading maybe negative things about it, but that's sort of something that's to be expected. And that actually didn't bother me as much as I thought it would, reading negative things about it, because when you read it, it's okay for people to have different opinions. And when you read something and you're like, oh, they saw it in a way that I did not see it, that's interesting. So I thought it would really offend me, but it hasn't so far. And yeah, luckily I haven't had too many negative experiences with being part of this.
That's good. And as far as negative comments, I mean the any movie that's kind of unique and the pacing of this movie is unique. So of course some people are gonna like it, some people aren't gonna like it. But your part, I feel like, is a solid one, whether you like the movie as a whole or not. Are you reading any comments that are specifically dogging you? Because I can't imagine that.
No, I also haven't read too many. I've read like some of the reviews by different publications.
Mhm.
Um, which has been interesting, but I haven't, like gone on Reddit. I started looking on Letterbox and then I was like, I'm just going into a rabbit hole right now. And it wasn't like, there was a whole mix of reviews, but I was like, if I continue, I was like, I think I should just stop. So I was proud of my self-control with
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
I
No,
think
that
because also, yeah, the cast is more in the background of the movie, not the background, but they're secondary.
right.
Um, when it comes to the film, like Johnny is is the person or thing or whatever you want to call it, that you're with during the movie, and then we're sort of secondary. So I think that's sort of like protected us from
Mm.
the specific bad comments, but I'm sure they're out there. I haven't read
Johnny
those or
spent
anything.
the whole movie terrorizing you, but now in the reviews, he is
Yeah.
protecting you guys from all the negativity, right?
Yes, wow.
Ah.
Yeah.
But letterbox, I comment, I post reviews on there too, but man, that place is wild when it comes to reviews. The
Yes.
things that people write, I mean, I think some people just try to write the funniest things possible. I like to just go in there and read the funny, crazy reviews. I feel like people post like on Rotten Tomatoes, like their real review, and then Letterbox just the most wild thing they can possibly come up with. So, yeah, I think it's smart not to go into a deep rabbit hole there because it's a scary place there for sure. Yeah,
Yes.
I can't imagine that.
Yeah.
If you would just tell us, in wrapping things up, what's the future hold for you, both on screen and off?
Yeah, I really hope it was such a dream to be able to work on a film like in a violent nature and with the team that I got to work with, and the other film also, So Much Tenderness. Those were really felt like, a dream come true for me. And so I would love to continue on working with people like that and working with very passionate people. Yeah, interesting, nuanced stories. That would be a dream to continue sort of on that path. And in terms of other things, maybe this is making me think that I should probably pick up a hobby. Because I guess my main hobbies would be going to movies and going for walks. So maybe this is making me think that I should probably pick up a couple of more hobbies. Oh, cooking. I like cooking. So hopefully this summer, that's a boring answer, but hopefully this summer there's more cooking and outdoor eating. That would be great. And going back to the film world, yeah, I feel I'm feeling very lucky right now, and I hope that I can continue working with the kind of people that I've worked with.
No, I love it. How can people connect with you? How can people, I guess, find the movie?
People can find it will be on streaming on Shutter soon. But I'm not quite sure about that. But it will be streaming soon on Shutter. Yes, you can find the movie on there, and in some places it will still be in theaters. And I recommend that if there's a theater close to you. It's very fun to watch it with an audience. And um, yeah, and connecting with me, I guess, through social media. And the only social media I have is Instagram, and it's just my name, Charlotte Creaghan.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time and the great questions.
So that was Charlotte Korean. Really, really awesome person to speak with. I urge you to check out the movie In a Violent Nature. It is a slasher movie. It is on the gory side. So if that's not what you're interested in, then that's okay. I think you'll still have enjoyed this conversation with, an up-and-coming actress that I think has a lot coming up. So stay tuned with her for sure. We talked at the end about where you can find it. I interviewed her a week or two after seeing the film myself in June. It is now late July of 2024, so it may still be in a few theaters, but most likely not. It is not yet on Shudder. As of this posting, it is on Amazon Prime, but you've got to rent it for, I think, $6.99. Well worth it, but if that's not something you want to do, continue being on the lookout for In a Violent Nature. It's definitely a good one to check out, if for no other reason than just the interesting way that it was shot. Definitely a unique film in that regard when it comes to kind of following the antagonist around the entire movie. So thank you, Charlotte, for joining me. Urge you to check out all her social media. The links to that will be in the show notes. If this is your first time listening to this podcast, go check us out too on Instagram, Not Enough Podcast, JacksonF.com, Not Enough with Jackson F on Facebook. Like I said in the beginning, leave that 5-star rating on Apple and on Spotify. Leave a written review on Apple. All those things help a lot. But if you do nothing else, catch us next week. Take it away, Chris.
This has been Not in a Huff with Jackson Huff. Thank you for listening. Be sure to join us next time where we will interview another amazing guest who is sure to make you laugh or make you think. Or, hey, maybe even both. But until then, keep being awesome.